Hey, welcome back. I used to live in Edmonton, and it's a wonderful city. It's such a warm city, and because it's so temperature-wise cold during the winter, boy, they make up for it in the spring and summer. It is a city of festivals. I used to live right downtown near Sir Winston Churchill Square, and every weekend there was something else going on, often food-oriented, so I loved it. It's just great. And they have something every year called the Edmonton Heritage Festival, which is sort of a multicultural thing where everybody comes and wears their old country's garb and serves. It's just a real coming together thing. But that can be tricky when countries abroad are waging wars, because we don't want to bring ancient hatreds or even modern hatreds going on in other parts of the world. We don't want to bring that here. We want to put our Canadianness first, don't we? And so I was absolutely staggered to read this statement by the German ambassador. We think there shouldn't be any Jewish culture promotion here, because this is the culture that brought up the generation of people who turned out to be invaders, looters, killers, and rapists. That's unfortunately what we as Germans feel, and the whole world sees that suffering. That's a pretty shocking thing to say about the Jews. Now, of course, you may have figured out what I'm doing. It wasn't the German ambassador talking about the Jews. It was the Ukrainian ambassador talking about Russians. Let me read it properly so you're not confused. We think there shouldn't be any Russian culture promotion here, because this is the culture that brought up the generation of people who turned out to be invaders, looters, killers, rapers. Yulia Kovalev said, that's unfortunately what we as Ukrainians feel, and the whole world sees that suffering. Oh my God, what do you think of that? Well, a man who wrote a column about it is our friend Lorne Gunter. The column is called Russian Canadians Should Not Be Denied the Chance to Celebrate Their Culture. It was published in Post Media, and he joins us today. Lorne, am I going over the top by transposing different ethnicities in there? I have to say, I was shocked by what that ambassador said.
No, and the point that I was trying to make is, so we have this terrific cultural festival, the Heritage Fest, every August long weekend. Our family calls it Things on a Stick Day, because there are about 80 different cultures that are represented, and about 90% of them have some sort of kebab-like food that they serve. So we have jokingly called it Things on a Stick Day for a long time. And last year, there was the Russian cultural group in Edmonton didn't participate in the festival, but this year they wanted to, and the festival said, no, we've received too many complaints, too many threats, and we're not going to allow that. And a lot of those threats seem to have come from Ukrainian organizations, including the official representative of the Ukrainian government to Ottawa. And that staggers me, because we're not talking about official country pavilions. This is not an international expo. This isn't Expo 67. It's not the expo in BC in 86. This is just a bunch of cultural organizations in Edmonton that for 50 years now have gotten together in the summer for a weekend to celebrate their ethnicity, their background. And so what you're talking about here is banning one group of Canadian citizens from celebrating their cultural heritage because another group of Canadian citizens has objected to it. And I think in many ways, this is the end point of our obsession with identity politics and our obsession with cancel culture. And so you have statements like that from the Ukrainian ambassador, which don't apply at all. These are not people. I'm guessing if you asked most of the people from the Edmonton Russian Cultural Organization, they are not in favor of Putin. They're not in favor of the invasion of Ukraine. They just happen to be Russian, of Russian extraction.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's weird for the ambassador of Ukraine to weigh in at all, because these are not foreign nationals. These are not instruments of the Russian government. I mean, you can hate Vladimir Putin, you can hate the Russian government, you can be, for sanctions against key parts of Russia's military industrial complex. Canada's done all those things. But like you say, these are Canadian citizens. I mean, there were a lot of Russians who came to Alberta at the same time, Ukrainians came. And by the way, the borders have shifted around. There were towns and cities that were Polish or Russian or Ukrainian, depending on the decade.
And Austrian, sometimes Austrian. That's how much they've switched around.
And there are some people who are new arrivals, but those ethnicities have been in Alberta since, there was an explicit immigration campaign to bring farmers from Eastern Europe to break the soil and build sod huts and develop the prairies. They are as Canadian as anyone. And I really feel like this is pitting ethnicities against each other. And I'm so disappointed in the government. And I say the government because it's up to the police and the city to provide police protection. I think this is actually shocking.
I do too. And if you could find sometimes with these ethnic groups, these cultural groups, they do get tourism support from the old country. For instance, like let's travel to Uganda. And they get a little bit of money for the Uganda pavilion from Uganda tourism. And so if there were official participation from the Russian government in the Russian pavilion, I would say, well, let's ask the organizers to expunge that, because we don't want to have anything at all to do with the Putin regime. So I think that would be fair. But to say, oh, well, we have concerns about safety, so we're not going to protect the Russians. You're saying we're not going to protect a group of Canadians from doing something that is perfectly legal and is within their charter rights. So it's not like saying we're not protecting the Putin representatives who will be here at the Heritage Festival. We're saying we're not going to protect other Canadians who happen to be of Russian extraction from exercising their cultural, linguistic, and charter rights by participating in the festival. And I think that's just giving in to the bullies.